How did you get so fat? How did I get so fat? I know, over the years when I watch a show like My 600 Pound Life or something like that, that's the question that always pops into my head. How do you let yourself get that big to the point where you can't walk and you can't move? And instantly after thinking that, my brain always goes to that second question. How did I get so fat? No, I'm not so big that I can't walk or work or, go do fun things outside of the house, but I'm still extremely overweight. And if you've been watching my videos, you know that, I started off at 353 pounds. Right now I'm at right around 316. So this isn't something that happens overnight. This isn't something that you think about consciously doing. And it's something so common that this is such a widespread issue all over the world, and in particular in the United States. So leading up to me really kicking off this weight loss journey that's really stuck, I did a lot of thinking on my why. Not my why I want to get healthy to motivate me, but my why in terms of how did I get here? And it's not a simple answer. I believe it kind of comes in layers. The most obvious answer to how did I get so fat is I ate too much. I ate too much and didn't burn off enough calories, and I gained weight. I mean, that's the basic scientific answer to everything. Now, if you take that down another layer and ask, so how did you get so fat? There's another layer below that. And this is something that I think a lot of people, get stuck on before they're really ready to dive deep into what happened. And there are reasons and different factors that can contribute to weight gain and an inability to lose weight. So here's some of the things that I could say. I could say that my family, people on both sides, are almost all overweight. And it's genetic. I'm predisposed to gaining weight. And there might be some truth to a predisposition. The other thing I could say is I have PCOS, which makes it extremely difficult to lose weight. And it also, affects your hormones and cravings and can lead to overeating and sugar cravings. The third thing I could say is that I grew up in a house where we didn't eat that great. There were lots of processed foods, not too much in terms of fruits and veggies, with the exception of, some canned things at dinner. It was very snack heavy, very carb heavy, very red meat heavy, not much, effort put into the healthiness of the whole thing, and lots of things out of a box and a bag from the freezer section and things like that. A typical lunch that was packed for me growing up was a sandwich on white bread, a Little Debbie, a bag of chips, and a quarter for a milk. And just to clarify, I'm not blaming my parents for this. I just know that was kind of how people ate back then, and we didn't really have the discussion going that we do now. So I don't blame them for that, but it's just another factor. I grew up eating these things, and it just became the way things were. So those are the reasons that I like to also call excuses. And if you are someone who has a medical issue that causes you to gain weight, I know some people have severe metabolic disorders. I'm not talking to you, but I'm talking to the people like me who do have these factors that most definitely did contribute to their weight gain and their inability or, slow weight loss when they made attempts. But if you really assess the situation and what you're doing and what you've done, they are excuses. Because no matter how much the deck has been stacked against me in terms of my weight, I was still making the choice every day to eat too much, to eat between meals. I was a compulsive overeater, as I have mentioned in earlier videos. And I, ate for different emotional reasons. So we're trying to get even beyond that second layer of the excuses. as I like to call them. So when I dig down to the third layer, these are more like the emotional issues that keep you eating and prevent you from being in control of what you're doing. And I think these mechanisms really put you on autopilot, where you don't even realize you're doing it or that's why you're doing it, but you start to eat to comfort yourself in times of stress, sadness, anger, boredom. You know, you use food as a way to alter your state of mind. And that can even be when you're happy and at a party and there's good food. And when you eat more good food, you convince yourself that eating all of that good food is going to enhance your experience. And these typically stem from some type of emotional or mental issues. And that brings us to the fourth layer, which to me is the deepest layer, and it's really your why. This is something I thought about for a very long time. I could not figure out my why. You know, a lot of times it is someone who experienced some kind of sexual abuse when they were younger, or physical abuse, mental abuse, and that didn't happen to me. So what is my why? It took me years and years of just saying, I don't know why. And in 2017 was when I really started to shift towards viewing this not just as a structural diet that I need to follow, but really honing in on the fact that I am an emotional overeater. I am a compulsive overeater. This is an addiction. So why do I have that addiction? And I really started to explore this deeply. And I was still, even when I got to the point where I was accepting that this was what it was, so that I could do more mental work in that area, the why eluded me for so long. And I journaled on it, I wrote about it, and nothing was really coming. And then one night, I started to have an idea on what it could be, and it just kind of came to me. And in order to get this out, I decided that I needed to talk it out. And I didn't want to talk about this with anybody else. So what I did was I went in my room and I pulled out my phone, and I basically recorded myself talking about it, because I think there's a great power in saying things out loud and letting the conversation flow, and things are going to come out that can't necessarily come out when you're, really focusing on the right words to say when you're typing or on paper, or even just thinking in your head. There's something powerful about saying things verbally that can really get to the heart of issues and pull out your deepest, feelings and thoughts and things out of your subconscious to try to figure it out. And what came out for me was that over the years, I ate to mask the pain or discomfort of not doing. I have always felt that I have a lot in me to share and to do, and things that I want to go out in the world and do. And I was extremely introverted, and it's so painful for me to go out and do things. And as long as I was fat, I had this excuse with myself, like, oh, I can't go out and do that yet because look at how you look. Nobody's going to take you seriously. Nobody's going to listen to you. You don't even, you could take one look at you and see that you don't have your shit together, Ryan. So there's no point in starting this. You need to lose the weight first. And I did try to lose the weight. I tried over and over and over again to lose the weight, and it never stuck. And I was just wrapped up in this pattern that I kept eating and essentially making myself fail to prevent myself from doing those things which were so scary to me. And I started to, that was the idea I had originally had when I was like, aha, I am getting somewhere. And I sat, and when I did this talking to myself type of exercise, I started to say that, and then it hadn't even occurred to me before I started talking, and I started to spin into a section of, so why am I afraid to go out and do those things? You know, even before I was overweight. Okay, so let me just kind of go back. I was not fat as a young child. You would never call me skinny, but I was more of an average body shape. Then around the time when I was about 12, I started to put weight on. The age when I first start remembering it is about 7th or 8th grade. And in particular, 8th grade, I remember, you know, feeling so much bigger than the other girls in my class. And I still wasn't huge. I was maybe 110, 115 pounds, maybe. You know, I was in like a girl's size 14, 16, but it seemed like everybody else was still weighing, you know, 90 to 100 pounds and, you know, wearing such cute little clothes that just didn't look right on me. So this age group is when I really started to gain weight. And it's been progressive ever since then. And at that time happens to be the exact time in which my parents got divorced. So my family. So I used to always tell myself that it didn't really bother me that my parents got a divorce. Even when I was young, even younger than this age that I'm talking about now, I was always someone who would hold my feelings in and try to be the strong one, try to be the solid one, who didn't let things bother me and who wasn't overly emotional, which was kind of the opposite of other people in my family. So I think I created an identity about that. And in reality, I would have those feelings, but I would hold them in, and it would tend to lead to anger. So, you know, by the time I was a teenager, it was like me in my room blaring music and being pissed off all the time. And as I got older, you know, so I started to eat more, and that became a problem. I was putting on weight, and then I was masking my feelings even more, and I got into patterns of experimenting with drugs, with alcohol, with different things like that as I got into my, you know, mid-teens and even into my early 20s. But I was able to pinpoint this time frame in my life as when everything really got started with my weight. So I started to think about, you know, how I felt at that time. And obviously I did feel like our family was breaking apart, that my dad didn't care enough to stay with us, that he was choosing somebody else, you know, this new lady over his family. And then my mother at the same time hated my father for cheating and breaking up the family. And she started to resent us because we still wanted to see our dad. And this is an ugly situation that, you know, went on for a really long time. So when I was younger, you know, probably 10 and under, I guess I was what you would call, out of my two siblings and I, the smart one. And I mean academically, I mean in school. I always got good grades. It was very easy for me. I was in, you know, what they call the gifted program in junior high and everything like that. And I was the one that was easy. My mom used to always talk about how ever since I was born, I was just the easy kid. You know, she could set me down when I was a year old with some toys and I would just occupy myself for hours. Whereas, you know, that wasn't the case with my siblings. So I had this identity of being, you know, good and smart. And once my family started to fall apart, I think I lost that identity. And at the same time, my sister started, you know, having issues in school, and my brother was having issues with acting out, you know, because we all dealt with this situation differently. And there was just years and years and years where no matter what I did, it didn't feel like I got any recognition for it, and it felt kind of pointless. You know, I would just easily bring home a good report card and they'd be, okay, good, great. Whereas if you come home from school with a bad report card, you got attention, you got help, they worried about you. And so I think there was a point when I just kind of quit, and I kind of gave up on my potential. And then on top of that, my family is not a family that pushed college. It was never, you're going to college after high school. It was never talked about. In fact, when I did want to go to college after high school, it was, well, gosh, we can't afford that. You don't need to go to college. And it was just I'm not saying that with more drive on my own part that I could have done it. I'm not making excuses, because just like with my weight, I'm responsible for those decisions that I made. So when you're younger, you don't, if you're not taught about mindfulness and consciousness and the way you think and how to process your feelings and your thoughts, you just create these autopilot behaviors, and you just do what comes. And it wasn't until my early 30s when I really started putting myself on a conscious path to exploring those things in an effort to take more control over my own life and to stop just living by reflex. And a lot of us live by reflex. You know, we learn and pick up different behaviors from our family and our friends. We learn bad habits. We learn defense mechanisms. And so that's what happened around that age group. And I kind of gave up, because it felt like no matter what I did, even though I was trying to be good and right, nobody cared. And I quit. And deep down, I knew that I was really missing something that I always wanted to do, which was have more of that drive and be more successful and put myself out there and do more. And instead, I just kind of shut that down, even though I felt uncomfortable about it deep down. And I just started on this path of, I ate more to hide my emotions. As I mentioned earlier, I experienced with different mind-altering substances to distract me from different emotions and feelings that I had. So I found myself living a life half-lived and having to be okay with that, because I didn't know back then that there was a way to not live on autopilot and just live on impulse like I was. And so I grew up, and during my young adult years, I started to, build a life where I was okay with me, even though I was fat, even though I wasn't living to my full potential, even though I wasn't out there doing the things that I wanted to do and I felt I needed to do. I created a life where I started to identify myself by different things, such as my relationships with men, by being a really dedicated mom when I had my daughter at 23, by being self-employed and being able to work from home and creating that good situation for myself, by being the person who was always exploring different things and being crafty and, learning how to sew and learning how to make fancy cakes and all these things in which I could feel accomplished, even though I wasn't doing the big things that I wanted to do. And I was really okay with myself. I mean, I did have some self-esteem issues, of course, as I was weight, and I always was trying to lose weight. Never did more than a month or two go by that I didn't embark on a new diet, a new weight loss plan, a new exercise plan. but I never really followed through. And it was because I never dealt with the deep down issues that were causing that. So I didn't even know what those issues were. They were so far off the radar that I was just trying small things to overcome a powerful auto drive, and it never worked. So when I really got to digging, I came across these things, and it really surprised me because I never thought that was a problem for me. I never thought that something as, it sounds kind of cheesy, but approval from your parents and getting attention for doing things that you thought, you deserved some kind of attention for, that those things mattered. I always was the one who was okay. I was the one who could deal. But I guess I wasn't. And so I ate, and I avoided, and I masked those feelings, and I created a life for myself where I was happy with myself despite my weight. I would choose all these other factors about myself that I loved. I mean, I do love me. I didn't like that I was fat, but there were so many things about me that I truly liked and still do. And so I latched onto those things and created that identity and avoided the other part. But obviously, I'm here now and I'm working on these things, and it's clear that I wasn't living my full potential. And, if you've watched any of my other videos or heard or read anything that I've done, just me doing these videos and talking is a huge piece of it. Because for so long, I had no voice outside of my very close friends and family. I avoided talking and sharing and putting myself out there, and got just how good it feels to be able to say these things and put them in public without the fear of judgment. And of course I can be judged, but I'm okay with that now. And I think I'm okay with putting myself out there, and the risks are worth it because I know what's possible if I can really, start living the life and live to my full potential. So I'm working on those things now, and I'm also working on my weight, because until I stop those behaviors that led to my weight gain, I'm not going to be living my full potential, because they're hiding it. They're hiding and keeping me from doing the important things. And that's where I am now. So I've stopped the overeating. I'm definitely not 100% cured. I don't know what the right word would be. They're still there. I still have temptations to eat, and I'm working on it. And I plan on, working on this for the long term. But I am doing things, and this is all an exercise in kind of figuring out who I really am. And I can't wait to see who I become when I have all those things that I identified myself as before, but I'm also not hiding like the deepest and best parts of myself. That's something I said to my husband sometime in the last couple years, as well as a really good friend of mine, is that the things that I don't want to talk about, or the things that I would hide from the public, are the things about me that I'm proudest of. It's the ideas that I have and the big things I want to do. And I was so embarrassed to talk about them. And instead I was just presenting a more shallow version of myself and hiding the best parts. So the more I can come out of my shell, the more I can strip off this layer of all these layers of emotional, physical defenses, and the more I can put myself out there and start following my gut instincts and doing those things that I've always wanted to do, I can't wait to see who I become. And so it's not just a very simple answer to say, why are you so fat? Because as you can see, it's layer, layer, and layer, and layer upon layer. And it goes very deeply, and it's not going to be the same answer for everybody, but that's mine. I would love to hear your why. If you've done a video like this, I'd love for you to put a link in the comments below, or even if you just want to write there what your why is. So I'd love to hear more about if people have similar experiences or if they can relate to this as well. And if you haven't figured out your why, I really suggest doing what I mentioned, which is to kind of do that exercise where you just talk to yourself. Start recording and just say, this is why, and just let your mind go. Even talking today, I think I learned new things about myself. And I think it's a great first step for kicking off a weight loss journey, because until you know what you're really dealing with, you can't be successful. You might for short periods of time, but you're not dealing with those core issues. And I identified these, I think it was in December, and I kicked off my weight loss journey in January, and it really stuck starting in February. So working on this made a huge difference, and I'm now going on 3 months of sticking with it and doing awesome, and I really don't see an end in sight for me making progress. So I feel like I've got it, and it's only going to get better from here. So thanks for listening, and as always, for following my journey. Bye.